Hello, welcome to another episode of the Daily Disney Podcast. This is episode 47. I'm so thankful that you're joining me today. And we're going to look a little bit off, kind of something a little different today than what we typically do. We're going to look at one specific ride that we've looked at before. We're going to look at Horizons, which used to be at Epcot. And really, we're going to look at what made it cool. So I guess that's kind of be the message today is what made Horizons cool. What makes it this cult classic that so many people that have enjoyed the ride personally or seen the video or just heard stories, what makes it so unique and so cool? I'm guilty of this. I think it's the best ride that Disney ever did. I remember it kind of like it was yesterday, and it was my favorite ride at Disney World back in the day. That and Spaceship Earth were my two. And really, it was just one of those things where it was so unique and so cool. And it starts with that kind of the building shape. Almost looks like a spaceship UFO type thing. It's all slanted. The building itself looks really, really neat. The logo, I love the logo. If it wasn't copyrighted, I would try to use it on everything that I do. But that's kind of just the start, right? And then you go in, and it's got a great soundtrack. The music is fantastic. The ride vehicles are those ride vehicles that kind of hang from the ceiling. And it's not like Peter Pan where there's a pirate ship and you're flying all over the place, and it's totally unique and different than that. They are lined up, an Omni-Mover ride system, so they're side by side, and they're all hanging one after another throughout the entire ride. So Omni-Mover just keeps moving. There were so many different things with that attraction that people kind of fell in love with, and we really haven't seen since. The first one that comes to mind is that kind of choose your own ending, where you can pick if you want space, water, desert, majority rules or whatever, I think is what it said. And it really allowed you to have a different ride experience almost every single time. We just don't see that right now. Mr. Toad's got 2 different tracks. A couple other rides around the world in the Disney parks are like that, where there's 2 different tracks. But honestly, this was the sequel to Carousel of Progress. It was in Future World. And really, it had everything that you could want. Communication, energy, transportation, anatomy, humankind relationship to the sea, the land, everything like that. And maybe it was so popular because it was only open for a short amount of time. It was only open from 83 to 94, and then 95 to 96, 97. And really by 99 it was gone. But it was replaced by Mission Space, and Mission Space isn't that great of a ride, so that's probably part of it too. People look back and say, man, what used to be there is so much better than what's there now. The queue itself had so many different pictures, and they had a almost like an airport type thing where there were things coming and going. There was just so many things there. It was also named Century 3, which was recognized the 3rd century of American existence. It changed to Future Probe and then to Horizons. So even those, Century 3 is a great name for something. I can't believe somebody hasn't, gobbled that up for something. You really felt throughout this ride that every single part of it, there was something cool going on, right? Whether the part where you see the robot in the kitchen with all the stuff, or the robot performing the haircut, the video conferencing. That was the first time we ever saw video conferencing way back in the 80s and early 90s. And now on every phone, I could FaceTime anybody in my phone book. I can FaceTime anyone. So it was ahead of its time with that. There were a lot of things that we still haven't seen. That space living, that more undersea type things. There's a lot of that stuff that we just haven't experienced yet. So the question of the day is, what made Horizon so cool? And I think it's a big bundle of a bunch of stuff. You have some ride qualities, attraction qualities that you just haven't seen again. You have not seen that same type of ride vehicle. Yeah, you've seen it with the Mermaid, you've seen it with the Nemo, you've seen it with different things where it's on the ground, but this was hanging from the ceiling. I mean, this was a totally different atmosphere, totally different ride. Kind of got that feeling of the dune buggy where you're sideways almost the whole time rather than facing forward. You saw different things that you just don't see in other scenes. It had everything in it. We talked about food, we talked about travel, we talked about space, we talked about sea, talked about robots, future living, we talked about all kinds of stuff. It had an amazing song, amazing soundtrack. There were just so many things about this ride that made it so cool. That very end, I already mentioned it, but how you can choose your own ride ending is amazing. And I'm just kind of amazed they haven't done that with other stuff. Now, Test Track comes close because you can kind of create your car and you see how your car reacts, but that doesn't impact the ride at all. It impacts what you see at the end. It impacts the results. The Haunted Mansions is the same ride every time. The Pirates of the Caribbean, every time. Jungle Cruise is different because the skipper is different. But this was one of those rides where you truly could find something new every single time. Now, I'm not condoning this, but there were a couple gentlemen back in the day that documented this entire ride. They jumped off the ride and they went behind the scenes. Just look up behind the scenes of Horizons and you'll find it. Amazing video. Amazing what they did. They being the cast members and Disney Imagineering to kind of hide different things. And it was amazing that they were able to do that where you as the general audience didn't even know this. There's somebody in the bathtub and all you saw were arms and a head. There was nothing else. Different things like that they did. This ride was very, very cool because it was only open a short time. Right? It was only open for 10 to 12 years and it was closed and then it was kind of opened and then it was closed and everybody kind of just took it for granted. Oh, it's a slow moving dark ride, whatever. Well, those 15 minutes are something that I know a ton of people, including myself, would like to get back, really. There's all kinds of people that have built this ride on computer simulators, built it on different theme park type games, and they're fun and they're cool. It's just not the right thing. Or it's not the real thing, right? It's just not. So it's one of the coolest things that you saw if you're able to see it. The music just would be in your head for days. In fact, if you go to YouTube and type in Disney, Epcot, Horizons music, I mean, they've got hour-long tributes and videos that you can listen to. So what made this ride so cool? I think everything. There were only a couple scenes where you're like, oh, okay, whatever. You know, most of these were the futuristic thinking about what the robots were going to look like, which we still don't have. The futuristic living in the ocean, living in the in outer space that we still don't have. Food production, how people are going to produce food. It gave you this glimpse of the future that you're like, oh, okay, that might really happen. So you really thought that way and you really felt that way. And, you know, there were times where you kind of just fell into it where you're in this ride for 15 minutes and nothing else is going on. So it's one of the most magical rides there that used to be at the Disney at Epcot. It has got an absolute just ground swelling of support where people, if you talk to anybody over 35, 30 maybe, that's a Disney fan, and you mention Horizons, they immediately go right to their point. There was another scene where you're going over an orange grove and they shot out some orange scent to you. That was kind of that first thing that we kind of experienced that with. Now it's at Figment and now it's with Soarin'. But going over that orange grove, you got that shot of orange scent right in your face and you felt and it really smelled like you were in an orange grove in Central Florida. So that amongst everything else going on. And then if you really thought about it and said, okay, this is the next thing with the Carousel of Progress. Okay, cool. This is how we just continue to proceed. This is how we continue to adapt and get things going for the future. So it was a really cool ride. It was really, really fun. Didn't have a thrill factor, of course. And now I feel like everything we're getting has to have a thrill factor to it. Even like Remy, it's a trackless ride and that's cool, but you got some jerking and moving around real quick and everything. I miss these old school dark rides that are Omnimover that just, there's a scene, watch it. There's another scene, watch it. This one, It had some special stuff. It had some great scenes. The audio animatronics were fine. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It wasn't anything near what we see today. But the few things that it had that stood out and made it work with everything else that was kind of just basic in there to make it the absolute best attraction that they ever had. That's my opinion. So let me know what you think. When you say the word Disney, Epcot, Horizons, words, not word, when you hear those three words, what comes to mind? Is it the Orange Grove? Is it the Choose Your Own Ending? Is it the Robot Butler? Is it the haircut? Is it the kid with his shoe flying out to outer space when the dad trying to get it? Is it the baby shower or the birthday party, whatever that is? Is it the different space shuttle type thing that you see in the video conferencing? There's so much. You can go on and on. You can spend hours going through this, looking at every scene. Is it the music? Or is it the fact that it had 3,700 tons of steel that's more than Spaceship Earth, and it might have been built on a bad part of the ground, sinkhole? Could it have been built on that, and is that really the reason why it disappeared? Disney's going to say it didn't have a sponsorship. The ride numbers were down, of course. They had a better, more thrilling ride on tap, for sure, of course. Totally understand. But if it had not been built on that sinkhole, I don't think... I don't know. I don't know what would have happened. It probably still would have closed. It wasn't that thrill factor. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't one where people were like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the most exciting ride of the day. It was a good, solid quality ride, and I think everything that had to do around it, immediately when you saw the building, from the logo to everything, it just made it so special and unique. All right, well, that's it for us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe on all of your favorite podcast outlets. And please give us a follow on the YouTube universe, Daily Disney Podcast, and on Twitter, Daily Disney Pod. We thank you so much for being here with us, and we will check you out later.